Since shortly after the Palestinian people attacked Israel on October 7th, the Houthis have been attacking as well. The Houthis in Yemen, um, nearly 400 drones and rockets, drones and missiles were fired at Israel, and every single one of those drones and missiles, after being fired, were met with a strong condemnation from the United Nations Secretary General and his spokespeople. Of course, that is not the case. None of them have been met with a condemnation, but the fourth of Israel's four uh, uh, responses to these attacks was met with a very strong condemnation by Gutierrez in a now deleted tweet, as Daniel tells me, which unfortunately we didn't save. But what we do have is a video of his spokesperson, which has not been deleted because it's not by the UN. So I think that that video tells us a lot of where the UN stands on this. And welcome to the Daily Objective. I'm joined by Daniel. Daniel, any thoughts you want to share before we see that video?
Well, just quickly about the how UN condemns, because I don't know specifically if they condemned Houthi attacks on Israel, because they do from time to time like condemn, but it's very important to look at the way they condemn. Whenever someone attacks Israel, whenever some savage country or a terrorist organization condemns, oh sorry, not condemns, but attacks Israel, there's always just some general well, we don't want escalation of violence, we don't want this to happen, but usually there's it's very like like basically unless you know what happened in that day, you have no idea what actually happened. Like you have no idea what it's referring to. But when Israel responds, when Israel defends itself, it's always pretty straightforward. Israel is breaking international law. It shouldn't do this. It's escalating violence. So whenever Israel does something, the culprits are named. Whenever something is done to Israel, then it's just like general broad statements. So,
Before you play the video, Elon Musk deserves a lot of criticism, but also some praise, specifically maybe for the fact that there's now this thing when you delete a tweet where oh, my background is blurred so you can't see it, but it shows up and then says this post has been deleted. So yeah, I can read you the entire post by Antonio Gutierrez from yesterday at 1:05 a.m. Central European Time. I regret the recent escalation between Yemen and Israel and remain deeply concerned about the risk of further escalation in the region. I mean, already the idea that there's escalation is ridiculous, and that escalation as such, you attach any moral value to it as such when you know that one side is responsible for there being a war. But he continues, airstrikes today on Sana's international airport, the Red Sea ports, and power stations in Yemen are especially alarming. The airstrikes reportedly resulted in numerous casualties, including at least three killed and dozens more injured. A UN humanitarian air service crew member was also injured when the airport was hit. A high-level UN delegation headed by World Health Organization Director General Dr. Tedros was at the airport when the strikes occurred. The delegation had just concluded discussions on the humanitarian situation in Yemen and the release of UN and other detained personnel. Jesus Christ. Okay, I'll keep reading it and then we can dissect it. Today's airstrikes.
wait, by the way, just quickly, can you send it to me somewhere just so I can also read it?
Yes. Let me finish reading it and then I'll send it. Today's airstrikes follow around a year of escalatory actions by the Houthis in the Red Sea and the region that threaten civilians, regional stability, and freedom of maritime navigation. I reiterate my call for all parties to cease military actions and exercise utmost restraint. International law must be respected. Civilians and humanitarian workers must never be targeted. Okay, so he finishes with the run-of-the-mill bullshit, which of course is also not good. Israel absolutely, if you are on the side of the good here, Israel should not uh, seize military actions and exercise restraint. Israel exercising restraint brought us this war. Um, yeah, Daniel.
Well, just quickly, can you screen cap it? Because when I saw go there, it just says the page doesn't exist. So maybe if you like see it before it like saves it like locally and you can see it later, but I cannot see it. Um, yeah, I mean, well, first of all, this like idea of escalation, it is like if you really think about it, it is like truly disgusting. Like, and I will make this comparison because this is absolutely what it is. Imagine if, someone is getting raped and to defend themselves, they like beat up the guy, or well, doesn't have to be a guy, but they beat up the other person or they defend itself. This is like escalation. They've escalated it from, well, it was just yeah, it was just I'm looking for a word and I cannot find it, but it was just something like that, and you escalated into like bigger physical violence or something like that. Like it is truly disgusting way of thinking. This is not whatever escalate, whatever it might even get to the point of like being an anti-concept. Like I almost don't see any way of like reasonably using escalation for something good. Like there is only one term of escalation: war. And when you start a war, that's it. There is no more that you can escalate. There is no more, there is no way to escalate. If you are at war, if you are a country at war, if you are a free country, then you have to defend your citizens. You are in a state of war. The lives of your people, the rights of your people are directly threatened by a foreign power. Everything is permitted. You have to end it as soon as possible. They've decided to start a war. There is no like war is not like some sort of trait that they started it, so we are willing to like. No, it's like there is no like reason for war. It's not like, well, we just had to go into war. It's like an inevitable or like inevitable nature of something that you sometimes you just find yourself in war. No, it was someone decided that they want to go kill people in a different nation. That's what it is. That's the only escalation you need. And sort of saying that Israel, and again, in this case, it was the Houthis. Now, I'm not sure what was first, if they first started attacking international shipping or they first started, but by first, I mean like post October 7, or attacked Israel. But once they attacked Israel, they are at war at Israel. Israeli lives are being threatened. Israeli the property rights, at the very least, and the most inherent right to life are being threatened. Israel has to finish it, and all other countries. This is not just on Israel. Every single country that has any respect for rights is actively being threatened by the Houthis. And saying that like Israelis in this case, or maybe even when during the Operation Prosperity Guardian, that the response from the West was like some sort of escalation. That's you are defending terrorists. There is nothing else behind it. You are defending the actions of terrorists, and you can hide behind something like, well, we just care about the civilians there. We care about our workers there, but you are not helping them either. You are perpetuating their life in dictatorship by not doing something about that regime, not even talking about the fact that these regimes don't just happen to create itself in a vacuum. There needs to be some people in there supporting it for it to ever exist. There needs to be some support. um so yeah, what was your question?
I don't think there was a question, but thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat, and thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Listen, the person in the chat, the troll. Look, I don't think this particular troll is worthy of being addressed, except for the fact that who are you trying to fool by saying what you think Ayn Rand would have said when you obviously have never read a word she's ever written? If you actually think she would support the savages who are attacking a civilized country for no reason other than wanting to destroy any element of civilization in the Middle East. Obviously, philosophically, you belong in the Middle East more than Israel does, in a sense, but Israel is changing the rules there by bringing civilization and has been doing so for 70 something years. So yeah, too bad for you. Yeah, look, we've, I don't think we're ever going to go more than a few days without talking about the UN because bad things happen in the world, and the UN immediately condemns anybody who tries to stop bad things from happening, and sometimes often does the both sides thing, but in passing, they don't do it. They either condemn Israel and nothing else, or they condemn Israel and talk about de-escalation on both sides and all that crap. While the Secretary General knows that on every front that Israel is fighting on, the other side started it, and Israel is now trying to prevent that side from being able to continue. So with the Palestinians, unfortunately, Israel cares more than they care about preventing the next October 7th from happening. They care about civilians and protecting civilians on the Palestinian side, as is evidenced by their actions. But when we hear this de-escalation nonsense, we don't need to look back to World War II, which we often reference here as the last war that the West actually fought with the intention of winning. We can look back to the last few months in Lebanon. Daily, we heard from Biden and Blinken de-escalation. It almost read like they were, just reading the same lines on a daily basis about de-escalation. And yeah, Israel eventually agreed to a ceasefire, which is a terrible decision because it leaves Hezbollah alive, but barely. I mean, Hezbollah will take a long, long time to regroup and rearm, and the destruction of Hezbollah also led to the downfall of the Assad totalitarian regime. And afterwards, Biden claimed credit for that, even though he was against the actions that he praised in his claiming of credit as the reason why this happened. So yeah, look, with Gutierrez, I certainly don't expect, if the Houthis are destroyed, that he will praise Israel in any way. He will never praise Israel in any way unless it lays down its arms and lets the Palestinians finish the job that Hitler started, which is their national goal. There's nothing that Israel can do right by these people, but hearing it every time is in a sense it's good because I hope that the UN continues with this line. I hope that the International Criminal Court continues to go after Netanyahu. I hope that the ICJ redefines genocide as anything that the Jews do other than die, because this will create a split that is much needed between those who are on the side of civilization and those who are on the side of savagery. And those who are on the side of savagery, we should let them do their thing without our support, without the West. Let's see how well they do. Daniel, any thoughts, or do you want to play the video?
Well, just quickly, because I have the tweet in front of me. I was sort of just shooting in the blind when I said that Gutierrez mentioned international law must be respected, but he actually said it in a tweet. So call it lucky guess or call it, thinking in principles and knowing what these people are about. Yeah, I think we can. I was just looking at chat if there are any points, but yeah, let's watch the video.
The Secretary General condemns the escalation between Yemen and Israel. Israeli airstrikes today on Sana'a International Airport, the Red Sea ports and power stations in Yemen are especially alarming. The airstrikes reportedly resulted in numerous casualties, including at least 3 people killed and dozens more injured. A United Nations humanitarian air service crew member was also injured when the airport was hit. A high-level delegation by the UN, headed by the World Health Organization Director General, Dr. Tedros, was at the airport when the strikes occurred. The delegation had just concluded discussions on the humanitarian situation in Yemen and on the release of UN and other detained personnel. Today's airstrikes follow around.
Uh,
Oh, well, that's just the end of the video.
yeah.
Okay, but we heard enough. Yeah, I think this piece of shit needs to be removed from the chat. But while we do that, let me. Um, yeah, it's interesting that they talk about UN personnel being on the ground to negotiate the release of other UN personnel by the Houthis, but they condemn Israel, who's also under attack by the Houthis, for defending itself. Where do you go? Where do you go with that?
I mean, it's a typical case of the UN. Like it is truly like a disgusting like organization because of the fact that every single freaking nation is in there, and whatever even apply, like the only requirement to sort of actually CGP Grey has a great video about how many nations are there, and he sort of discusses the fact that it's sort of hard to say how many nations are there because there is no it's hard to like find a definition beyond do other countries think you're a country that, and what basically that means is did you most likely by force take over some geographical area. That is pretty much the only thing that sort of sets a standard for a country, at least for the UN. I mean, if we, if there was any rational standard for a country, which should at the very least be some respect for individual rights, and I mean that should be the absolute bare minimum. By that standard, the amount of countries is gonna be probably closer to like 50 rather than about 200, around 200 that the UN recognizes. But yeah, by that effect, by the effect that every single country gets a seat in the UN and has same voting powers in the at least in the UN General Assembly, it means that UN has to think equally between all nations. Every nation has a chance to go to some sort of commission. Every country has a chance to participate in the UN peacekeeping forces to be involved somewhere. And again, what is like there is no standard. There is no like I almost pity like Antonio Guterres. Like imagine having to be such a person. You have to think of the United States and Iran in the same way. They're basically the same country for you. That this amount of basically like what do you call it? Like equality of countries makes it impossible to ever judge any situation. I mean, at some point, I think me and James have talked about how to analyze history and how you need to have a certain you can only value or sort of look at history by having some sort of standard or judge countries, judge other people by some sort of standard. When we say a country is bad or a country is good, it's not just by feelings. It's just by what makes a country good. Well, it's their respect for individual rights. Or what makes a person good? Well, it's their, I mean, depend how you want to say it, but let's say their commitment to their values and also commitment to reason and to good values at the very least. And so you can judge other people by that. But when like the UN, there is no standard. There is no way to judge. So if Israel attacks the Houthis, yeah, that's bad. If Houthis attack international shipping, well, yeah, that's bad. If or at least you say that's bad. If like anything happens, that's like bad. There is no way for them to judge. So that's why it is truly evil because it sees Israel and the Houthis, as basically the same. I mean, if you are Antonio Guterres, how do you even differentiate between these two?
Yeah. You feel bad for Gutierrez because he has to look at
Pity.
America. No, I don't pity him. He doesn't have to do any of this. He can quit his job, at any point. Evasion is not, a switch button that, you're stuck with your decision for life. At any point, he can say, you know what? This is absolutely messed up. And I am going to reverse course. Not to mention, he'll be welcomed as a hero by people who are, too quick to forgive. But yeah, Deborah said here in the chat, poor Razi, he thinks if the truth is exposed, people will see it. Not when too many are ostriches who refuse to see or recognize reality. Look, I absolutely don't think that Antonio Gutierrez and, well, certainly not him individually, he's not ignorant of the facts. He knows very well who's who and who's doing what. So does almost everybody who supports the Palestinians and the people who don't know. It's on them that they're supporting a cause without thinking it through. But the Palestinians live streamed the most Palestinian thing that has ever happened in history, which is October 7th. That is the image of who they are. And they chose to show the world this is who we are. And every single person in the world, this is why I say there cannot be, and nobody can at the same time be both a decent human being and a supporter of the Palestinians, because people have access to the videos that the Palestinian chose to show us. So no, I absolutely consider people acting not and making a decision on who to support, not based on a lack of facts, but based on their values. This is also my problem with Israeli Hasbara, both how it's done and the very idea of it, because the very idea of it is the world doesn't really understand that actually the Palestinians are not as good as they think and we're not as bad as they think. No, stop it. Stop apologizing. You're apologizing to people who want you dead because of your virtues. So, yeah, that's where I stand, and absolutely where I stand when it comes to the UN, who certainly their leadership and the majority of countries hate Israel for their virtues.
Yeah, I mean, well, someone in the chat says they think a silent majority in the West supports Israel. Well, I mean, that would depend. I mean, that sort of depends. You have to look at, how the next elections are going to go, or how it's generally going to go. I mean, yeah, that's a hard question, but yeah, I don't really even have much to add, because this is truly like, this is another case, another and another and another case of like the depravity of the UN, and it really needs to be gone. There is nothing good about the UN. Kirk Wilcox has a video on his channel I recommend checking out, and it says UN is a useless organization, and I think he made a follow-up: useless is still UN is still a useless organization. And the video is good, but I have a certain problems with the title, because it's not just that UN is a useless organization. UN is actively evil organization and we are contributing to it by participation. I mean, there were talks about suspending Israeli involvement in the UN, or sort of membership in the UN, and we should absolutely not wait for that. Israel has no place in the UN. I think I'm wondering if we did an episode about that, or if we did a short. But I have a point about, yeah, Israel has no place in the UN, because the purpose of UN is to fight against, it's to protect dictatorship, it's to fund dictatorships, it's to basically, yeah, defend dictatorships, both actively by things like UNIFIL, by getting yourself involved in conflicts that don't actually solve the things they are supposed to solve, but perpetuate terrorist groups or dictatorships. And yeah, also morally. I mean, look at every single like UN General Assembly like resolution. It's like you have about 2 to 3 chances. It's probably just gonna be against Israel, and when it's against something else, it's either gonna be some like broad thing that again doesn't really matter, because it doesn't achieve anything. It's just for show. It's just to say, hey, It's basically like virtue signaling, but it's actively working against any free country, against any country that has any value for individual rights, for has any Western values, has any um, any problems with dictatorship. So you know, UN has to go. I mean, there is no way around it.
Yeah, I do remember we did an episode when there was a news story that the UN might suspend Israel. I don't remember the details of how the UN suspends a country, but it is, of course, only Israel that they were discussing that I ever remember being discussed as a country that might be suspended by the UN. And I assume it's not the General Assembly who gets to vote on it because this would have happened a long time ago. But you can certainly know that, yeah, if they voted on removing Israel,
Yeah, so just quickly, the entry of any country to the UN cannot be vetoed by any of the big five, so China, Russia, US, France, and UK. And so I assume maybe suspension stands the same criteria.
yeah,
That's,
maybe,
by the
but
way, why Taiwan is not in the UN, because China doesn't like it. And I think also Russia wouldn't support it either. So yeah, great job, UN.
yeah, and look, and my point was, yeah, I'm almost certain that it's not the UN General Assembly that would vote on this, but can you imagine such a vote? Well, you don't have to. Just look at any vote by the UN General Assembly, most of which are about Israel. Something else that I don't off the top of my head remember, although I probably have it in my notes from like a week ago or whenever it was that we discussed the exact number, but it's the vast majority of UN General Assembly votes are about Israel, and of course condemnations of Israel. None of them are praise of Israel on anything. Again, praise of Israel you will only hear if Israel lays down its arms and lets the Jews be exterminated. So um, yeah, and when we did that episode, I don't remember what we titled it, but it was something like the UN finally suspends Israel. And I made the point that I hope this happens. I hope that the UN suspends Israel because, again, it will be a moment when the US will have to reconsider its own role in the UN. When some of the better countries will also have to reconsider it. And the UN is not fit for purpose, even if it was, a good idea or based on a good idea. That's not what it is. It's a bad, bad thing at the moment. It's bad, on its own. It's bad on its with its different elements. We almost exclusively talk about how anti-Israel it is, but when it tries to do other things like peacekeeping in Africa, that ends up very, very badly for the people whose peace is supposed to be kept. Nothing the UN does is good. So yeah, let's get rid of it. And after getting rid of it, let's consider doing something about the role that some of the people in the UN had in some horrendous crimes, including October 7th. Let's look into that, and yeah, let's not let them get away with it. They're getting away literally with murder and presenting themselves as the good guys because that murder is somehow justified.
Yeah, I mean, just specifically about the resolutions against UN. So I earlier mentioned it was probably like two-thirds of like resolutions against Israel. I was like doing in like an exaggerated voice. It was actually three-quarters, which is more than two-thirds. There was so like that's a joke. Like again, there's 200 different country, about 200 different countries in the UN. Plus, there's a most of them are full members, but there are some like the Palestinian territories, whatever they are, that have like some partial membership or some, I think, observer status. Uh, and it's like really one country of Israel that with like 10 million people in a world of 7 billion or 8 billion or whatever it's now, that like had to have three quarters against itself. while there is a Russia-Ukraine conflict going on, while the Syrian civil war was still going on, while the Yemeni civil war was going on, and you could go on and on with like every single conflict going on in the world. And no, it's Israel.
And you don't have to go to those conflicts. Stick with that conflict. None of the condemnations should be of Israel. They should be of the other side. By the way, somebody here in the chat says, selling my Ayn Rand books due to this organization's perverse views on Israel, which is a moment which I will take to remind people that not only is Jim Brown's book available on Amazon, but Ayn Rand's books are available on Amazon. And if you buy them on Amazon rather than from this guy, the money goes to a better cause, making Jeff Bezos richer. So yeah, consider doing that. And of course, if you buy Jim Brown's book, A Black Hole in Economics, Money Creation and Its Consequences, some of that money goes to Jeff Bezos. Some of that money goes to the Ayn Rand Center UK. So everybody wins except some of the trolls in the chat. And in a way, they win too. They just don't know it.
Yeah, I mean, what was I even? Yeah, I mean, the resolutions against Israel. Again, like that's why we had a conversation about like pro-Israeli people going on Piers Morgan and sort of like trying to do, how do you pronounce it, Hasbara? Basically trying to for those who don't know, it's I think the idea is it's like Jewish people trying to explain to Westerners like what's going on, so they understand the situation. And
And look, just quickly, the thing with Hasbara, is that it's it's um it's true that the facts as presented are not as they are, that the other side lies. But that is not why people side with the Palestinians. It's their values that make them side with the Palestinians.
uh, uh, what was I talking about again? Oh yeah, trying to Hasbara. Uh, uh, Yeah, oh yeah, because I was talking about Piers Morgan, and yeah, there are people, pro-Israel people, going on Piers Morgan, like trying to explain the situation or debunk the numbers or whatever, and it's like we are 14 months in. I really don't believe there's like a single person that's like undecided, like based on like it reminds me of that joke by Bill Burr. I think it was in 2016 election that he doesn't believe in presidential debates because there is no one going on after like three debates. There is no one going on like, well, yeah, that's a good point. But then there's also this, like, there's no one like switching between pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian side now because of like, the facts are changing. It is truly like it is like a moral question. It is truly mostly moral question. And for anyone, and I think it's a very small number of people, but for anyone who actually cares about facts, well, those facts are there. You can go look up everything and go learn it. But that pretty much I mean even since October 7th it hasn't really been the main issue with Israel or against Israel wasn't factual. When the number was 5,000 it was already too high. When the Hamas health ministry said the number of casualties 5,000, that was probably already too much. There was no number low enough Israel could get that they could somehow retain um, like their moral status or anything like that. I mean, just think about it. The fact that Israel claims, I don't know what's the number, that the number of Hamas militants they killed, I think it's moving somewhere like 15 to 20,000. Don't quote me on that. But again, imagine if they only killed like Hamas members. So it would still be like in tens of thousands. So and that number was too high for people. So it was literally impossible for Israel to do this job. Um,
Yeah, and remember, we hear, from the Owen Joneses of the world, tens of thousands of babies and women and so on. And at some points, he gives like a breakdown. What you never hear from any of these people is how many, even if they're buying Hamas numbers, how many are terrorists, how many are militants, however you want to call them. You don't hear that because they to them, those are people fighting the good fight, and also they understand fully well that Uh, yeah, it took me a moment to see, but that's Kyle Steele, right? Uh, yeah, you know, thrown off by this, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean
Daniel.
to jump in, someone says, I agree with Daniel, but some influencer has like changed his mind based on. So I think
Yeah.
it's similar to the capitalism debate. I think it's on a similar levels. It's everybody knows capitalism is more productive than socialism or mixed economy or whatever. It's the debate was won at the very least in '89, but even before that was pretty much won for a long time. The main and again going to Kirk Wilcox, the capitalism versus socialism debate is not about economics; it's about morality. And in a similar way with Israel, it's not about the number of people Israel kills. It's about the morality. Do you believe a nation has not a right to defend itself, but obligation towards its citizens to do whatever is necessary to protect them and to finish whatever war some other nation or terrorist group started? Or do you not believe in that? And that will determine your view on this. And just quickly, because someone earlier said, hypothetically, what would happen if Israel leaves the UN? Nothing. Taiwan is not in the UN. Actually, it will probably help you because you will be more skeptical of organizations such as WHO, and that's why Taiwan had like surprisingly good handling of the COVID because they were skeptical of whatever information was coming out of China. So it will probably be even better for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I also wanted to make the point that I do think some people do change their mind. It doesn't happen a lot, but also a big part of what, I hope that we get to achieve here is not necessarily almost certainly not changing the mind of anybody who spends their Saturdays in central London or wherever, shouting about genocide, but of people who are pro-Israel, with an asterisk, pro-Israel in the Netanyahu sense of pro-Israel, kind of apologetically pro-Israel, historical pro-Israel for biblical reasons. We wanna improve the pro-Israel side because it is about values, and we hope that people reconsider their values if those are not compatible with humans living their best life. Daniel, I see that the troll who is a big fan of yours is in the chat, which is a great time to wrap up. Any parting thoughts?
Well, I just want to say I respect my trolls as much as they respect me. Uh,
Really?
I, I'm sort of like I'm Jim Taggart basically, or no, Peter Keating more of a, if someone says nice things about me, then I feel good about myself and
You
I
know,
have
people
respect for
people
them.
take these things you say seriously. There was somebody who commented a few days ago saying, "Oh, you're saying that Gaza is an open air prison. I'm never watching this channel again." And this is in response to you. So yeah, you need a sarcasm sign, I think, when you make such comments. But anyway,
Well, people who don't get sarcasm, well, okay, I won't finish this because it's playing into it even more. But I mean, sort of wrapping up topic. I mean, really, uh, there is no place for the UN in this world. There might be some place for some international organization, maybe in the future. But any organization, if you start the organization by inviting Soviet Union and giving it like an important seat, yeah, you're already poisoning it from the start. So yeah, that there is absolutely no case for it, and that's why something like this happens again and again and again. It's not a bug of UN. It's feature.
Speaking of bugging the UN, nothing bugs them more than this channel, which I'm sure they watch daily, doing better. So if you appreciate this content, even if you don't appreciate this content, but only like Daniel, consider hitting the like button, sharing, commenting, comments help with the algorithm, and of course, if you really like what we do, then consider becoming a contributor. And as a member, you get access to a bunch of other things, hours of additional content, even at the cheapest level of membership. So and a lot more as you go higher up. So consider doing that. We will be back tomorrow as we do every day. I think the daily objective is every single day, including we're going to be here New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. The reality show is taking the day off on New Year's Day, but all the daily objective is on every day, and the other show is on every day other than New Year's and the weekend. Um, yeah, I think that is it. We have been filibustering for a while. So thanks, Daniel. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.